Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to a video on Lovely Couples Phase 3. In this video, I'm going to be discussing each of the available monsters. I'm going to give my insight on who I think is worth getting and also which monsters are worth purchasing, if any. So as you can see, there are currently 6 breedable monsters. And there's actually a 7th breedable monster, as well as hidden combinations to breed some of the monsters you see before you. So I always recommend that you guys check out monsterwiki.com so you can see those combinations. So let's take a look at Monster Wiki, and here are the combinations as well as the chance to actually get them. As you can see, to breed Joppers and Gretchen, you have a 5% chance to get them. For Monster D.Vice, Mr. Flaky, Nexor, and Totem, if you substitute Galante or Violet for one of the monsters, the chance of getting that monster goes from 5% to 8%. So if you have Galante or Violet, take advantage of that. And in order to get Galante Jr, you need to breed Galante and Violet for a 3% chance to get them. So first I'm going to go over some highlights of each monster, and then at the end of the video I'll give my opinion on who's worth getting first. So we start things off with Joppers, who has a speed of 2900. And with a speed like that, it would put her somewhere in like 40th place from all the epic monsters, which I know seems like very low, but Joppers is one of the few epic monsters that you can realistically run all speedruns, thus making her faster than even some legendary monsters. As for her trait, she's immune to stun, which is a fantastic trait to have. And as for her skills, the ones that stand out the most are her AoE stun and her possession skill. And just to give everyone some ideas of her usability, imagine a team wars involving magic monsters, some other elements, and epics. While one of the most difficult things about being in a magic war is that on defense the enemy will probably run an Egg Eater. Egg Eater can either burn and blind you or AoE possession you. And Egg Eater himself is immune to possession, so if you run a magic monster with an AoE possession, you're still going to be missing that Egg Eater, and then Egg Eater, if the AI is smart, will do the AoE burn and blind, and you're kind of in trouble. So one really good counter could be to run Joppers with all speedruns, and that's probably going to be faster than your attacker and the enemy's attacker. And then for your magic monster, you can run someone like Galante. Galante has a 100% stamina drain skill, and Galante has a really fast base speed, so you'd be able to go with Galante, drain Egg Eater stamina, Egg Eater would have to recharge, and then Joppers would go, and then you can do your AoE stun. So Joppers is definitely a fantastic epic monster. She could be extremely useful in Team Wars, and the fact that she's currently breedable, it'd be a really good way to rank her up. And next up we have Gretchen. She has a speed of 3575, which is the fastest magic monster. Unfortunately for Gretchen, her trait is energized, which means she can easily be possessed. But the most amazing thing about Gretchen would have to be her skill, upper level elixir. All allies reflect all attacks back except for physical ones for the next 2 turns. So Gretchen is one of the best offensive monsters you can use. I already mentioned that a lot of players will put Egg Eater on defense, so if you start the game off with Gretchen and use upper level elixir, all of your monsters will have mirror. If that Egg Eater does AoE burn and blind, you're going to reflect that back at them. If Egg Eater does AoE possession, you're going to reflect that too. And don't forget that mirror lasts for 2 turns, so even if Egg Eater does burn and blind first and on the next turn does possession, you're kind of safe because you're reflecting all of that. Keep in mind that the middle monster is the one that reflects, and keep in mind that you'll still take damage, so Gretchen is not a good monster to keep your common or your uncommon alive. Still, with Gretchen's speed and her mirror lasting 2 turns, she's a fantastic magic monster. And next we have Monster D.Vice, a fantastic thunder monster who doesn't get enough credit. Its speed is 3465, which is a fantastic speed to have. Unfortunately, its immunity is not the greatest. It's immune to daze. I wish it could have been better, but it is what it is. One fantastic skill Monster D.Vice has is updated software. Burning immunity, daze immunity, stun immunity, and freeze immunity for 2 full turns for all of your team. If for some reason your opponent ever runs Dr. Victor, Tempest, or Nexor on defense, then this would be a really good skill to counter that stun. Aside from that, Monster D.Vice also has a possession skill, which is pretty rare for thunder monsters. And we have this skill right here, very low battery, which drains 75% of stamina from the target. And this is a really good counter to Voltic, who you will most likely encounter in Team Wars. The difficult thing about battling a Voltic is that there's a 20% chance you can't stun it, you can't freeze it, and if you possess it, that doesn't matter because he has a lot of extra turn skills. So there's realistically only like 3 ways to counter Voltic. The first of which is that you wipe out Voltic in 1 hit. The second way to counter Voltic is to protect your team by means of space time, light blocker, or just some sort of effect that protects you from thunder attacks. And the third way to counter Voltic is by draining his stamina. So if you were to use very low battery on Voltic, he'd only have 25% of his stamina left, and once he uses that stamina, he's gonna have to recharge. And guess what you'll do after Voltic recharges? Once it's your monster's turn again, you have a skill called low battery, which drains 50% of stamina, which would force Voltic to have to recharge once again. So Monster D.Vice is another monster worth going for, someone who doesn't get enough credit due to the fact that he's a thunder monster. Next up is a monster called Mr. Flaky, and unfortunately for him, he has a speed of 3399, which is kinda slow for magic monsters, especially if his skills don't do enough. And his trait is also immune to daze, so it'd be way better if he had something like immune to possession. The skill that stands out the most for Mr. Flaky is borrowed time. Target can't attack on the next turn, requires cooldown, so it's time stop for 1 turn, which means whether the monster is immune to possession, immune to stun, immune to freeze, you can still immobilize immobilize whatever monster you want. Certainly a fantastic skill, but this also means he can only ever immobilize one monster, and once again, his speed is too slow compared to the other magic monsters. Next up we have another thunder monster, Nexor, and with a speed of 3465, again just like monster D.Vice, this is a fantastic speed to have. His trait is hardened, which is pretty good, which means 20% chance that he can be immobilized. As for his skills, he has paralyzing shockwaves, an AoE stun skill. And I know a lot of people are thinking, you don't really need Nexor if you have Voltic, but you know what, in particular Team Wars, specifically the one that comes to mind is a Team Wars involving Fire and Thunder, where Fire has no deniers. Nexor would be your prime choice. I don't think you'd want to run an attacker fire monster and a Voltic, because if the enemy was to have a Nexor on their team and was to AoE stun you and your monster were to get stunned, you'd be in trouble. So if you're in need of a Thunder denier, I would go for Nexor. And by the way, Nexor also has a skill called Fatal Shockwave, which can apply Shocked and Shield Block, and Shocked works really good against nature monsters, where Shield Block works really good against earth monsters. So if you were ever to find yourself in one of those Team Wars and you couldn't use Voltic for whatever reason, then Nexor could be a pretty good choice. And thus we move on to Totem, another magic monster, and honestly the best thing about this monster would have to be his trait, which is pretty much the same as Timerion's trait. No status effects can land on him. But the thing about Totem is he's pretty much a pure supportive monster. He has no offensive skills and he's only there to support one monster, which means in Team Wars he isn't ever usable. And I guess that's not really true, because if it's ever Team Wars involving something like legendary, magic, and some other element, you could use Totem, but at the same time, instead of using Totem, you could probably use a really good magic monster, and for that legendary slot, use either your best attacker or your best denier, so Totem really wouldn't get that much usage in a Team Wars. In something like player versus player, you can definitely use him, and really he's just more of a fun monster. I wouldn't recommend going for him in this breeding event. And last but not least, we have Galante Jr. He has a speed of 3455, which is the exact same speed as Violet's. His trait is also immune to possession, so he's already starting things off strong. As for his skills, the most impressive is Get Shifty. Removes 50% of stamina from all targets, may possess all targets. This skill is just well, especially because you'll be able to use it on the first turn. And to top things off, we look at skills group 1, he has a skill called Swagger Leak. Applies Stamina Leak to all targets. So if you start the game off with his first skill that drains 50% of stamina and possesses, then the enemy monsters use one attack against their team, and then use Swagger Leak. When it's their turn again, they're going to lose 15% of their stamina, and it's going to force them to recharge. So you would have successfully denied the enemy team for 2 full turns with this monster. And if that wasn't enough, he also comes with a stun skill, perfect for immobilizing just about every single magic monster. And once again, going back to the stats, the fact that he's breedable, if you were lucky enough to get 2 of him, you could rank him up into level 105, and with a speed of 3611, his base speed would be faster than every other magic monster. And even though there's only a 3% chance to get Galante Jr, you might really want to consider going for him. And apart from the breeding event, there's also a few monsters you can actually purchase for gems. Demise and the Sentinel, as well as Roxanne and Worker Hulk. And without a doubt, the number one monster you should buy, even though it costs 249 gems, you should get yourself a Demise. She is by far the best light legendary monster in the whole entire game, and even one of the best monsters overall. You should definitely get Demise. I know I say you should normally wait until a monster costs 225 gems, but I honestly don't know if Social Point is increasing the price of all other monsters, and maybe like 249 is the new 225, so if you can, it's not even that much of a gem difference, get yourself a Demise, do yourself a favor please. And next we have the Sentinel, and with the speed of 3476, that makes him the fastest metal legendary monster. And this monster is honestly quite good, and I'm actually a little surprised he doesn't get used more often, especially because he himself has an AoE possession skills, and not that many metal monsters are immune to possession, so depending on who your enemy has on defense for Team Wars, Sentinel could be a prime choice. And then we have Roxanne, who's a metal attacker, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say that I wouldn't recommend this monster. Not because he isn't a good attacker or anything, he actually is a pretty good attacker, but there's so many different metal monsters to choose from that he honestly doesn't stand out that much to me. And there's also Worker Hulk, but I'm not going to spend time talking about him just because he's a breedable legendary monster, and spending 249 gems for him would be a complete waste of time. Alright, so now for the next part of the video, I'm going to tell you guys which monsters I think are worth prioritizing. Just keep in mind, this is just my opinion, and everyone is in a different situation. For example, if I was to recommend a magic monster as the main priority, but you don't have any thunder monsters, for you it would probably be ideal to get a thunder monster. So with that being said, I would have to say there are 3 monsters that actually share the number 1 spot for being your priority. Galante Jr, Gretchen, and Monster D.Vice. Any of those 3 monsters should be your number 1 priority. I can't say exactly who because they're all really good, and it depends whether you need a magic monster or a thunder monster, or which monster you want to rank up, but any of those 3 monsters I just named, they would be ideal. After those 3 monsters, I would have to say go for Nexor, or quite possibly even Joppers if you need an epic monster. so either Nexor or Joppers. I myself would lean more toward Nexor just because he's a legendary, but if you needed an epic monster, get yourself a Joppers. And then I would say Mr. Flaky and Totem, but to be 100% completely honest, I wouldn't even waste time with Flaky and Totem considering this is a timed event, and I would really just focus on monster D.Vice, Gretchen, or Galante Jr. And as for the monsters, just please do yourself a favor and get yourself a Demise. And with that being said, that is going to conclude this video. I want to hear from all of you. Who is your #1 priority in this event, and have you gotten them yet, or do you think you're going to get them? Best of luck to everyone who watched this video. I hope you can get whoever you want to get, and like always, remember to dream big and pursue your passions.